In this video we are going to set up PCSX2, an amazing PlayStation 2 emulator which just got its latest 2.0 update, enhancing the experience a lot. The setup is a lot simpler and for many games it doesn't require any custom setups, so that's amazing. Before you get started on this, there are some things that you need to check. You need to get a BIOS. This is dumped from the console itself. I can't help if you download these from the internet, that's up to you. I can't give support for that, so that's just disclaimer. If you want to dump your BIOS the legal way, the link is in the description below and I can help you. Same goes for the discs. I can help you if you dump these, but again, no support if you pirate them. You can download 7-zip. This is a free program which can extract the 7-zip archives from PCSX2. The thing you also need is the Visual Studio C++ redistributables. This is installed on most computers and it is also linked down below if you don't have it installed yet. But if you get an error about VC runtime not found, this is the issue. And if you want to record videos in PCSX2, you can download the libraries right here. But for now, once you have all of that done and set up, we can head over to downloading the emulator. So first you can choose, do you want to download stable or nightly? In general, stable is more tested, so it should be more stable and more bugs should be found in it. But nightly might have newer features, better performance, or pretty much bug fixes or whatever. But because they are less tested, they also might have some bugs in them. For me, I like to live a bit on the edge, so I'm going to get the nightly build. But do whatever you want, and if you have issues with nightly, also check if that issue is still there in stable, since maybe it has just been a regression. Either way, it is nice to report those in the PCSX2 Discord linked below. So for now, let's download the Windows version. We might get into Linux or macOS on a later date and save it. Once here, you can see it is in the 7-zip archive. So right click it, go to 7-zip and extract in a folder. Once in there, you can simply start up PCSX2 Qt. Qt is the new UI used and it is really great. So here you can do all the basic setups, so pick a language, pick a theme, and I suggest to enable automatic updates so you get all the latest fixes to your version of PCSX2. Next we need to select our BIOS. For us this is in emulation PS2 BIOS. Select folder, and we can see here we have our PS2 BIOS from Europe. Press next. Next to add our games, simply click add. Go to wherever you store all your games. And right here it says to ask recursively. So if you have folders with games in them, you can do that here. For me, they're all in the same folder, so I could press no, but let's just select yes for now. Next is the controller setup. You can here select the controller type. So most of the time you want to emulate the DualShock controller, which is the actual PlayStation 2 controller. But if you want to emulate any of these, you could. But for now, let's set up the DualShock 2 controller. And the automatic map mix to keyboard, and you can go to mouse, and I connected a PlayStation 4 controller, so you can also press that right here. If you connect any other controller, it should be selected right here, but we'll get more into that later as well. Then next, and the setup is complete, that's great. If you press finish, you can go into the games right here. So I got 2 Ratchet & Clank games, still one of my favorite series, and we are going to dive into the settings. Here in system, there isn't that much interesting there. You can boot into the BIOS to get the amazing animation from the PlayStation 2. A lot of nostalgia there. So let's go through the settings. As I said before, most of these can just be left at default. For all of this, there are some preferences here, like have a save state on shutdown, pause on start, pause on controller disconnection. These are all just nice features. I'm going to enable Discord rich presence. That's just a fun feature if you use Discord a lot. But any of these are pretty much up for preference. The game list right here, you can include and exclude paths, should speak for itself. The BIOS is selected, that's great. Emulation, I wouldn't recommend to mess with this that much. If you use CPUs with big and little cores, like the newer Intel CPUs, enabling thread printing might improve performance, but you mightn't even notice this since those processors are already so fast that you can just leave it at the default, but that might help a little bit. Also, you can do stuff like enable cheats, and if you're on a very old hard drive, you can enable pre-caching, but do it at your own risk. First test if the game works, just double click it right here, start it up. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you might need to check some settings. You can here change some settings according to the rendering. So for example, if you want VSync, you can enable this, but again, pretty much up to you. I will just leave these at the default. For the rendering, here are some options which for me are nice. For some games, I like to enable the widescreen hack to get widescreen, since I don't have an old monitor, I have a 4K monitor right now, and it's just nicer to not have black bars. Might not work great with all games. And for some pixel art games, it is nice to use the integer scaling, so you can get the nice crisp corners. But again, that's only if you use those 2D games. For most 3D games, leave this disabled for sure. Also up here you see rendering, leave this automatic. It should automatically select the best renderer for your GPU. If it has issues, you can check the documentation where it goes into detail. Same for the adapter, this should just be the default. If you really want to pick a certain GPU, like for example I could pick my 3060, might be better if your PC has issues, but in general the default should definitely pick the best one. So just leave it like that. Next, my favorite feature is the internal resolution. If you have a fast enough GPU, which many of you honestly have for these games, you can crank this up pretty high. For me, I had no issue running this at 4K. With Ratchet & Clank, it was a solid 8% utilization of my GPU. And for me, this is just looking a lot better than any sort of anti-aliasing. So if you want, you can scale this up. If you want the PlayStation 2 default graphics, you can do that, of course. But these are just this is just a nice setting to have to change the resolution. For the filtering, I would leave all of this at the default. Sometimes it is nicer to have anisotropic filtering. What this does is it filters the textures when being viewed from extreme angles, so it could be a little bit better. So for me, I found this to look a little bit better, so I'm gonna put this as 16x. It is up to you, the game works fine on off. This is just a bit of an advanced feature. And out of these, I recommend having these at the default. The blending accuracy is at basic, it can go a lot higher, but for me, I didn't notice any visual differences. You can replace textures, you can play around with post-processing. Definitely fun to do myself. I honestly keep everything disabled. And for debugging, you can enable the on-screen dialogue display. I think it's dialogue, which is nice, and you can record. Never really used recording like this. I use OBS, but if this is nice for you, it's nice for you. Audio, leave everything at the default. For memory cards, it says it's missing. I'm just going to have the emulator and the console do everything itself and just keep them like this. Network, not going to mess with this. Folders, not going to mess with this. And for the achievements, if you want to use retro achievements, you can enable it right here. And you can also enable the hardcore mode, which disables cheats and stuff. So you can actually do the leaderboard tracking. It is very fun to play with achievements. So definitely, if you want to play more on this, could be fun to enable these and sign in. You can sign in right here. And that's just something really fun. But of course, it's not a PlayStation feature itself. It's just a nice add-on. So that's it for the settings. As I said, there isn't much to tweak, and with the default settings, all the games I tried just work, which is amazing. Next, the only thing we are going to look into is the controllers. I really hope there was just one setting here for all of these and then the controllers separately, because the controllers are in a different window. So that's a bit confusing to me that all of these are in the same window and the controllers is in a different one. Not my preference, but hey, if it works, it works. So for pretty much all the time you should enable the SDL input. RAW input might have some better support, but for most controllers, that works. For the DualShock 4 support, I have a PlayStation 4 DualShock 4 controller, so I'm going to enable this. But for any other controllers, of course, disable this. Only use this if you have a DualShock 4 or a DualSense controller. This is just a really small feature. Any of these might give some improvements if you use older versions of inputs. But again, SDL should pretty much map anything. Right here for the controllers, so you can do controllers right here. You can do the automatic mapping, so that can be the keyboard, the mouse, or the PlayStation 4 controller I've connected. And that should load up pretty much the best versions there are. Of course, you can change these if you, for example, really want to switch the X and the circle. You can do so right here. You can click this, then press X, click this, then click circle, etc. Let's quickly put them back because it's really not nice to play with. But you could, if that's more preferable for you, you could change those around. Just know that it might be a bit confusing since the UI does not change. But this is just a really easy setup. You can change your inputs right here. But again, automatic mapping is honestly really great to work with. So that's great. Now, once you're ready, one more thing I want to mention. If you right-click a game, you could go into Properties. And here you can make changes to just a single game. So right now everything just takes the general settings. but you could also start full screen for just this game, whatever. Some games require specific hacks, so check out the wiki if you have issues with a game. But in general, it shouldn't matter that much, and most of these are also for preference on the interface, so do whatever you want there. And now if you double click the game, it should just start up, work, and be very enjoyable. So right now I skipped the introduction from the PlayStation 2 and just went straight in game, since it saves some time, so that's really nice. You can see right here, my memory card was not loaded, so I can just format the memory card right here. And this should be a one-time thing, and you see in the top left corner that the memory card was saved to storage, which means we now have a memory card which works, and it should be used in other games as well. And we can pretty much save data here, and that's done. So this was the really quick guide on how to get this emulator working on your PC. If you enjoyed this, definitely let me know by subscribing and liking, so I can get back into making all of these amazing guides and showcasing many more amazing software. So again, let me know what you think, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Cheers.
Thank you for using help desk technology.
Don't you love it when it says it's done, but it's not really done?